Good morning or afternoon, everybody. Welcome back into another One Piece video. Chapter 1159 has released, and you know we gotta talk about it. So, thankfully, Oda did not give us anything grand with this cover page story. You know, last week, man, we spent, I went back and I counted. I spent a total of around 120 minutes in videos just talking about Moria. So thankfully, this week, we're going to keep it short, sweet, and simple. We see Yamato, Ulti, and Page 1 heading back to the Flower Capital because their mission is now complete, and they have paid their respects to Kozuki Moria. One thing I do want to point out is that it's kind of ironic that they're leaving Ringo while eating an apple, because Ringo, translated into English, simply means apple. So I guess that's a pretty cool thing Oda did. Outside of that, you know, Oda always puts in a little editor's note before the chapter begins, and I typically just skip over those. But here this week, I did want to shine a little bit of a spotlight on it, and Oda says that One Piece Day is shaping up to be an excellent event. Enjoy the family atmosphere, okay? And you might be wondering, okay, what's the point of that, right? Well, if you do not know, One Piece Day is around the corner. It is next week. Typically, this happens once or twice a year, where One Piece does like a whole weekend event where they do a bunch of big announcements, or they'll talk about the production of the anime, or etc. And generally, I do tend to enjoy these events because I just want to see if we'll ever get a new One Piece game announcement or just another One Piece movie. You know, it has been a couple of years. I feel like we are in dire straits for one of those. Like, I don't know, man. Is it crazy for me to want a One Piece fighting game or even a One Piece action adventure game that is good? Because so far, we do not have anything that really fits the bill for that. You know, people will die on the hill that Burning Blood is great, but that is objectively one of the worst selling One Piece games out there. And then as far as the One Piece movie goes, brother, the One Piece movie, Film Red, broke the top 10 highest grossing animated movies of all time, in Japan, at least. So I just don't know why they haven't announced another one yet. Like, I don't understand. Maybe they're working on one on the sidelines, but it's like, dude, the money is right there. And One Piece isn't gonna last forever, right? How many more years do we have with the series? Pump out those movies, guys, come on. I want to give them my money. So, on to the chapter now. We start things off with something absurd. So, we all knew that Shakky was going to get kidnapped. That is a canon event. But, the perpetrator was somebody that I personally didn't suspect. People were talking about it, and I even brought up the theory, but it wasn't a theory that I fully believed in. But, lo and behold, the perpetrator, the man who killed Don Marlone and stole Shakky for the world government, was none other than Wang Ji. Should have seen this coming, right? There have been a lot of theories floating out there that Wang Ji and Caribou are related, right? They both have the long tongues, they both look disgusting, and we know that Caribou, back in Fishman Island, he was kidnapping mermaids so that he could auction them off to the world government. If Wang Ji's his father, I mean, he fits the bill with that, right? It's almost like a parallel. Just kidnapping women is the family MO at this point, if that is true. And what's absurd is that he actually killed one of his Nakama. And it's funny because this is, as Whitebeard said, one of the worst things that a pirate could actually do. Stabbing your comrade in the back is absolutely taboo. Of course, the Rocks pirates are not known for camaraderie, but still, man. Still. I hate to see Don Marlone go like this. I loved his design, and we never got a bounty reveal. We never really spent too much time with him. And it's like, man, if Oda's gonna do this to him, I wish we at least got one or two panels of the fight. Like, maybe Don Marlone's like, Wang Ji, why are you doing this? And then, you know, he whips out double pistols or something. Or we see Wang Ji stab him in the back, and we get, like, some final dialogue there. I don't know, man. Don Marlone got done so dirty, brother. And, you know, for Wang Ji, I think this does make a lot of sense for what happens in the future. Because after Rocks gets defeated here in God Valley, Wang Ji takes over Pirate Island. And for, I guess, like 38 years, nobody's ever contested him. The world government never called him a Yonko. He never became a warlord. He was just kind of chilling on the side, and that was always really odd. And the first Marine that we know of that interacted with Wang Ji and fought him was Kobe, a member of Sword. Why is that? Well, here's my crackpot theory. It's because he was under world government protection to some extent. Maybe after he sold Shakky off, he's like, hey guys, don't forget I did y'all a solid, so just leave me alone. I think that could be a nice explanation. Not like we need it per se, right? Wang Ji, I bet, is just a force to be reckoned with, so people don't want to fight him anyways. But I think that would just be a nice, little oomph to give to him. Also, something I did find kind of funny is that not once in this chapter do they mention that Wang Ji is the one who kidnapped Shakky and killed Don Marlone. We just all assume it because after the news that Shakky's captured, we have Gloriosa, crying her eyes out. And then right beside her, we have Wang Ji, smiling and counting money. And then later on, when they talk about saving Shakky, Wang Ji's like, are we sure about that, guys? Do we really want to go to God Valley? So yeah, it's definitely him. I do not think the narrator has to clarify this one for us, right? One thing I do want to mention, though, is that I am surprised that Wang Ji was able to kidnap Shakky. I mean, I get it, right? Motivated by money, Wang Ji is not a good person. Yeah, sure. But going back to all the people that Shakky's interacted with in the past, the minute Shakky says something, they crumble. So Wang Ji, brother, I don't know how he did it. Maybe he wore a blindfold. Maybe he plugged his ears. But Wang Ji did it. So we see everybody's reaction to the Shakky news. Apparently, her kidnapping was so devastating that the entire economy of the world halted for multiple days. Damn, the narrator even said that smiles faded from existence after this. Bro, that motion is crazy. We also see Roger, and he tears up a newspaper saying, "Damn you, Rocks, how could you let this happen? I am going to kick your ass." Which I think is hilarious, and this does, in my opinion, confirm Roger's line in God Valley being a reference to Shakky, because when he drops off onto God Valley, he says, "Hey, Rocks, do you know how I felt for the past year?" And here we have it. Shakky has indeed been kidnapped for a full year leading up to the tournament, which is absolutely insane when you really think about it. Shakky was up at Marie's Raw for a whole year, and nobody touched her. Nobody did a single thing. I'm kind of glad Oda added that in. We already had the Ginny situation, so I kind of don't want Shakky to be in the same boat. So I'm glad Oda dropped that clarification there. And the reason why they didn't do anything to Shakky is because they wanted to keep her pristine for whoever would win the God Valley tournament. So now, moving on with the chapter, we are now 38 years in the past, the day of reckoning at God Valley, and we see Garling has just made landfall, and he's talking to Shanks and Shamrock's mother. She's happy, dude. She is elated to see him. She says, "Garling, I'm so happy. I always knew you'd come back." "Shamrock, Shanks, it's your father." "Twins, huh? How precious," he says. She says, "Yeah, they're your kids. Why don't you stay here with me, bro?" She's infatuated with him, man. But Garling, his response is that, "Well, if I were to share a home with you, it certainly wouldn't be here. This island will not be around much longer," which I did find really interesting. So Garling knows that this island will disappear. Not just that the tournament will be held here, but that by the end of the tournament, the island will be marked off the map. So I wonder, was Emu using the Leloucia weapon all the way back then? Because correct me if I'm wrong, at this point in time, I don't think that Vegapunk has given the Gorosei-Emu the Mother Flame yet. So how did they manage to erase the island? Did they Buster call it? Or maybe the weapon that destroyed Leloucia has some fuel left over from 900 years ago, and then Vegapunk simply filled up the tank. I am really curious about that one. And of course, like I said, I think the timeline works with that, but I'm not exactly sure. I haven't gone back and checked. So my apologies if I'm wrong there. So Garland goes on and he says, "Besides, I have already secured a worthy bride for myself, and I placed the order." He is the one who ordered the hit on Shakky. He says, "She will be mine, provided I triumph in the upcoming tournament." She says, "Tournament?" And the next thing we see is absolutely foul. Dude, we got the twins in a stroller in the same shot as Garling stabbing his girl. That is a foul, man. Oda. Hey, I'm a villain lover. I am glad we're getting outright villains in this final saga, dude. Garling is, somebody said he's kind of like Griffith, right? And I agree. He is a beautiful monster. Even as a straight man myself, right? Happily married and everything. I look at Garling and I'm like, damn, dude. He is fine as fuck, man. Garling, after killing her, quickly moves on, and he just says, begin the preparations. Not even a goodbye, it's just business as usual. So one thing I've been seeing people say, and I've always been on this boat as well, but they said since Garling was the one who ordered the hit on Shakky, that it wouldn't be shocking if he was also the one who ordered the hit on Ginny. Because, you know, at that point in time, they said that this is that person's 8th wife. Well, I don't know how Garling refers to this girl right here, but this could be like wife number 1, and then he has 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then by the time he gets Ginny, that'll be like wife number 8. And the thing is, too, is that, you know, it always goes back to that SPS where Oda gender bent the supernova. And, you know, of course, that later became canon with gender bent Law being turned into a woman thanks to Doc Q's Devil Fruit. Well, for Bonnie does look somewhat like Shanks in that one. And the explanation could simply be that Garling was the guy who picked up Ginny, or who at least ordered the hit on Ginny. So, moving on though, we see that the Marines are also on this island. And they're actually hitting all the civilians with tranquilizer darts so that they do not escape before the rabbit hunting tournament begins. And we get a very special Marine on this island. We get none other than a Monkey D. Dragon, a 17-year-old dragon here. And my god, I've been seeing people rag on his looks, but I actually think he looks really cool. People are saying he kind of looks like Snake Man Luffy. I see that. I also see Nightmare Luffy, or even kind of like a Super Saiyan 3 transformation because he's lacking eyebrows. But yeah, I think Dragon looks actually kind of awesome here. And as far as the symbol that he has tattooed on his face, last we saw in the Vegapunk flashback, it was on his leg. Here, in this flashback, it's actually on his arm. So he's had this symbol for quite some time. And I'm just kind of wondering what it is. I just feel like that's a question we won't get answered for a while now. But yeah, that mark does make another appearance all the way back before he was a revolutionary. Another thing I found kind of interesting too is that out of all of the Marines, let me check real quick. Yeah, out of all of the Marines, Dragon is the only one that actually has a backpack. I don't know why he has a backpack. Maybe that's where his ammunition is stored. But even for Marines throughout the series, we've never really seen that. So I do wonder if the backpack will play a role later on. You know, maybe he uses it to switch out the babies because he does get tasked with saving them by the end of this chapter. But yeah, the backpack, I think, was the most notable thing to me. So now that we have the big reveal that Dragon was indeed on this island, I'm just looking forward to what kind of confrontations he will have. I do think this is the event that made him be wary of the Holy Knights. Dragon told the Revs that they're biding their time until the Holy Knights make the first move. I think here on this island is where he witnessed the true power of these God Knights. Because, you know, it's one thing if they're just a strong faction, but if they're a strong, undying faction, yeah, let's avoid them as best as possible. Kind of like if you're playing Dead Space or Resident Evil and you're being chased by a guy that can't be killed, yeah, you don't fight them, you just leave. You don't waste your ammo. So I think this is where he gets instilled with that knowledge. Maybe he sees Rox or Roger or, you know, other people fight the Holy Knights. They get whooped, but they end up getting back up regardless. So yeah, I think this is where Dragon sees that. And as far as confrontations go, there's two in particular that I'm really looking forward to. The first one, of course, would be Dragon meeting Garp here, right? Because Garp, according to Sengoku, of course, this is from Sengoku's perspective and he wasn't even on the island, but Sengoku told us that Garp protected the celestial dragons alongside Roger. How would Dragon feel about that? After witnessing firsthand what's happening on this island, how does he feel about his father letting this all slide and siding with the dragons? The other confrontation I'm really looking forward to is Dragon and Garling. Because here's the thing, right? If Dragon does go on this mission to save Shanks and Shamrock, he's gonna run into their dad. You know, Dragon is successful in saving Shanks, but maybe when he tries to put Shamrock in a treasure chest or take him off the island, that's when Garling steps in and he says, whoa, buddy, where are you going with my son? And brother, I think that confrontation would go so hard. And, you know, I'm just thinking about future matchups now. Like, when it comes to Garling, I do want to ask you guys this, but who do you think will take him down in the end? Would it be Shanks avenging his mother by defeating his father? Would it be Dragon after witnessing what's happening here and after their initial confrontation? Or would the onus go to Blackbeard because Garling is the reason why the Davey Clan has seemingly been exterminated? I wonder, brother, I wonder. So we go down and we have now moved on over to the Navy prison ship that is transporting all the slaves to God Valley. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Is this the first all-black ship we've had in the series? Of course, this is a black and white manga, so maybe by the time the anime gets here, it's like a purple ship, or maybe it's blue or periwinkle or something. But based on the shading, dude, this looks like an all-black ship. And I can't help but go back to what we know about the man marked by flames. The man marked by flames pilots an all-black ship, and if we add in what Shiryu hypothesized, Shiryu thinks that whoever owns that ship, whoever has that final road poneglyph, that they are affiliated with the world government. This right here fits the bill. The only thing we do not know of right now is who actually commandeers this ship. We don't see the ship captain, and of course, even if there is a ship captain currently, there is a good chance that somebody could just steal this ship by the end of God Valley. Right? Maybe everybody's trying to leave the island. The island is about to get blown up. And then somebody says, oh, look, a prison ship. I'm hopping on that and I'm taking it. And that could be the man marked by flames. Maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit too quickly on this. But hell, like I said, this is the first, quote, all-black ship we have in the series. So while we're on this ship, we do get cut-ins of Ivankov, Ginny, and Kuma. And it's pretty cool, right? We see that Ginny has successfully leaked intel to someone on the outside. And we come to find out that the person is, of course, a young Big News Morgans. He approaches Cypherpole's Intelligence Bureau, which is a brand new building we've never seen before, and he says, hey guys, I got some interesting news. If you do not want me to leak it, pay me some money. But of course, he's gonna leak it anyways. He just wants to get some extra grub. The Cypherpole agents say, hey, be careful, Morgans. We might just erase you. And Morgans says, just try to stop me. Take him up on the offer. Kill him. I don't get it. Morgans has always been a thorn in the side of the world government for so long. I just don't get why they can't kill him. I mean, he's not strong, is he? People always say, oh, well, Sai, he boxed a Cypherpole agent, but that was a nobody, man. Like, I don't know, send Rob Lucci after this guy. And, you know, nowadays, I get it. You know, Morgans could be strong. He's an adult. But in this flashback, he's 15 years old. What kind of power does this kid have? You know, Morgans, he kind of feels like a Black Zetsu in a way. Like, he's just always there in the background. And until, you know, the day of reckoning, until we get that reveal, I just don't know if he's gonna be, like, a major player or if he's always just gonna be a newspaper boy. Like, for all we know, he could undo his transformation and he's like one of the most cracked characters in the verse. I just do not know how to feel about this kid. And it's funny knowing that here, even as a 15-year-old, he is the president of the News Coup Corporation. And not just that, but he's still in his Zoan Devil Fruit form. Why doesn't he take it off? Never once has he taken it off. He eats, breathes, and sleeps and shits in this form. Dude, when Oda reveals his human form, I feel like it's going to be like a mind-blowing thing, or it's going to be the most mundane thing known to mankind. I just cannot make up my mind on this one. Morgans is such a funny character, dude. I love him. You know, I think he's great for the story, just because I just don't know about him, man. So, we now go down, and we're cutting back over to Hachinosu. And thanks to Morgans and Ginny, the Rocks Pirates now know where she's being held. She's being held at none other than God Valley. It's hilarious seeing Wang Ji's face, because he's like, well, you know, maybe we shouldn't go. This is a little bit fishy, guys. And I gotta say, man, the balls on Wang Ji to still be here within the crew after what he did, it's a little bit foul. I'm not gonna lie, dude. Just knowing that he murked Don Marlone 10 feet away from where he's sitting in this chapter is insane. But of course, he is here. I have tried to look through the rest of the chapter to see if he actually followed the crew to God Valley, and I don't see him. So there is a good chance that he stayed on Hachinosu. He could be the one person that stayed there, and that's why he is the one who took over the island afterwards. I could totally see that happening. Because Rox does say, hey, if you guys have cold feet, stay here on this island because we're moving to God Valley. I think Wang Ji took that offer. I think Wang Ji just stayed here, planted his happy ass on the throne, and that's all she wrote, brother. So, we do see that everybody's talking about Shakky. They're all reacting to it. Of course, we kind of knew already that she is one of the main motivators as to why so many big factions go to God Valley. And it's pretty cool, right? We see Roger as well. He says, hey guys, like, where's God Valley? Scopper says, oh, it's pretty far, but we should make it in time. Which is nice because, it reinforces that Scopper is the navigator of the Roger Pirates. And up until this point, we've never really seen Scopper do any navigational things. So here we have it. Of course, the Roger Pirates are very fired up, Rayleigh especially, right? Roger says, hey, are you boys with me? And then Rayleigh takes top dog in that panel, and he says, of course we are! Of course we're gonna save Shakky! And then we get the iconic Garp panel where he says, wait, Roger's going? I'm going too. So that is when we cut back over to the Rox Pirates. They have just left Hachinosu, and they have ran into Harold out on the open seas. Harold is trying to stop them. He says, hey, I knew y'all would make your move. I heard about how important that Shakky girl is, so I just knew I'd find you here. Rox is like, yo, you government lapdog, I cannot believe you're still doing this. You're over here fighting for them. They're over here watching on the side in a safe, comfy position. All right, now that I'm done dissing you, Harold, let's have a quick drink, which I think is hilarious, right? 1 minute, Rox has like an entire panel just bashing Harold, and then he's like, hey, brother, can we just talk? Can we just have a little drink? And this scene, man, it's so good. It does remind me of Roger talking to Whitebeard. And what's nice about that scene is that that's right before Roger turns himself in and gets executed. And that's kind of the vibe here as well, right? We know that Rox dies very shortly after, so this is Rox's final meal or final drink. So Rox, he says, listen, this is for your ears only. I'm not even going to tell my own crew about this. I have a hidden name. It is Davy D Xebec. The world government has tried to execute my lineage for some time now because it's tied to the lineage of the legendary pirate Davy D Jones. Brother, it's a big reveal. It really is. I just don't know where to go with it yet. All I have to say, though, is that it's even more silly now that Emu did not murk Rox when he was in the flower room. Like, I get it, right? Emu's trying to conceal their presence. They don't want to cause a storm. But still, you're trying to execute the Davey Clan, and you do not kill a Davy Jones enthusiast when they're in your room? Nuts, man. So yes, Rox's real name is, of course, Davy, and he tells us that the Davey Clan actually lives at God Valley. That is where his wife and his son actually are. And he said, yo, the government made a mistake. I don't think they know that I hail from that island, because now that they've done that, they have me to deal with. He goes on and he says, it feels like destiny is pulling me in. It's dragging me back there. Taking Shakky was their biggest blunder. As long as I get my wife and kid to safety, I'll be at peace with whatever happens next. And, we know that Blackbeard survives. But his wife, on the other hand, I really don't think she makes it, man. I mean, hey, a lot of wives in One Piece or women in One Piece or mothers in One Piece, they don't make it, man. The hit ratio is high on that one. I don't know if anybody's ever made a list on dead mothers, but I guarantee you, there's more dead mothers in One Piece, probably 5 times than the amount of dead fathers in One Piece, bro. But yes, he says all of this, and he ends off by saying, hey, Harold, lend me a hand, man. And of course, I feel like Harold wanted to, but it would sour the relationship he has with the world government, so he can't do it. But I do believe, at the very least, Harold did throw the fight against Rox D Xebec. I mean, hell, even looking at Harold, when he turns Rox down, you can tell he's very conflicted. He says, no way, I'm gonna sink you, Rox, right here and now. And then right before they start fighting, Harold does turn over to all of his men, and he says, hey guys, don't interfere with what's gonna happen. And then in the very next panel, we see the giant ship blow up. I do think that Harold threw the fight. A little bit of a headcanon there, but I don't think that Harold would stand in the way of a man going to save his wife and son. And plus, not to mention, but I bet Rox also has a lot of family members there as well, right? Maybe a cousin, I don't know, maybe a brother, sister, etc. Like, there's probably a lot of Davey Clan members that have blood ties to Rox. So yeah, I doubt Harold wants to stand in the way of that. So, before we move on to the final page of the chapter, I am curious now. Now that we have the Davey Clan reveal, now that we know that Rox has been hiding his real name this entire time, will we meet more characters like this? Like Luffy, for example, right? Monkey D. Luffy. Is Monkey truly his last name? Or will it be something else entirely? Like maybe when we get the Joy Boy reveal, we learn that Luffy actually hails from that family. Or maybe Joy Boy was simply a monkey. I think the possibility of that is kind of high, but I do want to pass that question on to you guys. How would you feel about that? Because while I do think that would be kind of cool, it's like, man, we've been calling him Monkey D. Luffy this entire time. Please, Oda, if you switch it up, man, hopefully it's worth it. Hopefully it's worth it. Another thing about the Davey Clan as well is I wonder what makes them special, right? Minus the tie to Davy Jones, does the Davey Clan have something special to their lineage? Like, could this be the explanation as to why Blackbeard's body is so special, right? Marco said that his body's really odd, and that could be what led him to eating 2 devil fruits and not dying in the process. Also, according to Buggy, Blackbeard doesn't sleep, right? He hasn't slept an ounce in his life. So I think being a part of the Davey Clan could be the explanation. But if that's the case, I just kind of wish we got some inclination of that with Rox. Like perhaps one of the characters on Rox's crew brings it up like, oh, Rox, he doesn't really sleep, does he? Is it weird that Rox doesn't have a bed frame? Like maybe something like that. Or Blackbeard is just the special member of the Davey Clan that has those abilities, which is a pretty awful ability, mind you. Like, I don't know. If you guys were offered the ability to not sleep for the rest of your life, would you take it? Because I feel like it would be very beneficial. Like, imagine all the hours at work you could put in. Overtime? My God. But at the same time, like, dreaming kind of feels nice, Like, sleeping, when you wake up, it kind of feels nice. So I can see why it would suck, but I don't know. And then, this is assuming that you don't get tired as well, It would suck if you got tired. That'd be a nasty, nasty drawback. But yeah, aside from that, I do wonder if the Davey Clan has been passing down some ancient text or maybe an ancient weapon, or if they just have powers like I just mentioned previously. But yeah, the Davey Clan reveal is just absolutely massive, brother. And of course, since we now know that the Davey Clan lives at God Valley, we do also have to ask the question, does Shanks and Shamrock also hail from the Davey Clan? I've been seeing people saying that Garling would not actively mate with a Davey Clan member or a D Clan member, but maybe he didn't know, or maybe he was just curious to see what would happen if he did that. And then another thing we do have to take into consideration is that there's a good chance that not everybody on this island is from the Davey D Clan. Because imagine how hard it would be to date on this island. Like, just think about it for a second. You're a young kid, you fell in love with the lass from across the street, you mate with her, and then here comes your papa, and he says, hey son, you just had sex with your cousin. I almost did that in real life, man, and I stopped myself before I got too far. But it's like, damn, man, like, yeah, I doubt everybody on this island is a Davey D Clan member, so the thought of Shanks' mom being a part of that, I think has some wiggle room, right? I think it'd be interesting if she was a part of the Davey D Clan, and that is why Shanks is considered a child of destiny, because we have Celestial Dragon blood mixing with the D Clan blood. But of course, like I said, that doesn't have to be the case. That is just a theory floating around right now. So yeah, I do want to ask you guys how you feel about that. Would you like Shanks to be a part of the Davey Clan or a D Clan member in general? Or no, would you rather Shanks just be a Celestial Dragon mixed with Commoner's blood? I do want to ask that. And also, one thing that would make the Davey Clan member theory interesting would be Shanks' relationship with Blackbeard. Like, imagine that. They're both Davey Clan members at the end of the day, but they still actively hate each other. Of course, I think Blackbeard has a lot of reasons to hate Shanks. Like, Shanks, your father's the one who started all of this. Your dad was the one who killed my mom in the rabbit hunting tournament. because she should be considered a special prize, right? Well, actually, no. She's just a regular woman, but she did give birth to Blackbeard, who is special. No, I don't think his mom's a special rabbit, so I don't think Garling would go after her. But then again, Garling was the champion of God Valley, so either way, Garling does kill a lot of civilians here. So, on to the final page of the chapter now, and we are hit with the retcon. Yes, that is right, guys. Oda is changing things up on us. So, back in chapter 1096, when the rabbit hunting tournament begins, and when everybody starts running away, we see 6 treasure chests in the background. But here we have it. In this chapter, instead of 6, we actually have 9 now, with the inclusion of Shakky. But for Shakky, we could just say that she walked on stage at the very end. But yeah, Oda decided to add in 3 new treasure chests. Some people are saying this isn't a retcon and they simply brought in 3 additional pillars and chests at the start or the end of the tournament. But either way, I believe this is a retcon. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. You know, especially if these chests do end up being very impactful, if all 9 do end up mattering, yeah, I'm cool with it. So, as far as this goes, though, because Oda decided to change the number of devil fruits available, I do think that they will all be mentioned and we will see every single one of them. Right? With 6, it's like, okay, you know, that's whatever. But now that he's getting very specific, now that we're getting into the nitty-gritty, yeah, I think they will play a big role. And what's funny about this, too, is that Big Mom, earlier in this chapter, when she mentions going after the devil fruits, she even goes as far to say that she wants to get some of these for her kids. So I wouldn't be super shocked if we end up seeing Katakuri's devil fruit, or Parasparrow's devil fruit, or, you know, Oven's devil fruit here. I think that would be pretty cool, and that could, you know, help get rid of some of these devil fruits here on the island. And of course, speaking of devil fruits, a lot of people, I held a poll on this, a lot of people believe that Dragon actually will eat a devil fruit here on this island. Because Shanks does end up in one of these treasure chests, people are saying that something must have been taken out in its place. Now that we know that devil fruits are there, yes, Dragon could have taken it out and eaten it, and then put Shanks in the chest instead. This could be where Dragon gets his wind-based Zoan or wind Logia power or whatever he has. And I'm down for it, you know? When you think about the devil fruits we know of that are on this island already, we know 2 out of 9. We know that the Pawpaw fruit is here, and we know that the Seiryu fruit is here as well. Those are top-tier level devil fruits. You know, when people talk about the top 10 most powerful, those fruits are almost always on that list. Now imagine 7 other fruits on that tier and or higher. So now, the next thing we have to talk about is the fact that Oda decided to bring in Saint Somers and Gunko to God Valley. Brother. We kind of already made the assumption that Somers was present, because during the Scopper Gabon fight, Somers knew Scopper. It seems like they fought in the past, so bringing him here, I think fits very well, and I cannot wait to see what Scopper did to this guy in the past. I think that'll be a lot of fun to see. And then, of course, with Gunko, this is an interesting one, because last we saw Gunko, in this flashback, she was a personal servant to Imu. So Gunko being here, I think is very fascinating, because that does open up the door for Imu to show up. Because here at Elbaf, you know, Imu is possessing Gunko. If, in the past, Gunko could still be possessed, yeah, Imu could show up at any point in time. Like maybe Rox goes absolutely crazy after they kill his wife. Or maybe Roger starts running amok afterwards. And then Emo's like, okay, guys, what is the commotion here? I'm taking over for a minute. That would be a lot of fun. I would love to see how the top tiers of the verse end up handling Gunko Imu. And not just that, but if Imu starts using Dome Reversi on this island, maybe we can get a hint as to how to stop that present day. A lot of things can be revealed with this. Another thing I do want to make note of, too, is that since Gunko is a part of the Manmeyer family, we see the Manmeyer girl from 1096 here again, and Oda is still hiding her face, which is a little bit odd, you know, hiding the Holy Knights. I get it, right? There's a lot of them that Oda still has to reveal. I believe we know of 8 or 9 Holy Knights as of right now, but we do know that there's about 11 or 12 of them. So there are still some that we have not seen, But for this girl in particular, we've had multiple panels of her, and Oda has always hid her eyes. So it does bring me back to an old theory that spawned on Naked Island, and it's that maybe the reason Oda is hiding her is because she looks identical to York, right? And how York always has her tongue out. She also has a rifle that's like her weapon of choice, I guess. And I don't think that's bad necessarily. You know, when it comes to York wanting to be a celestial dragon, maybe it stems from the fact that she looks and or was based off of a celestial dragon. And that's why Vegapunk made her greed, because celestial dragons are greedy. I don't think that's a bad theory. And I feel like that could be an explanation as to why, like I said, Oda is hiding her face time and time again. So, end of the chapter, we get the MC, and he's going absolutely crazy. He's talking about Shakky, saying, hey, you know, the champion of God Valley will get this lady as a prize. You can take her as your wife, or you can simply make her your slave. Summers is throwing around shade, saying, yep, I'm going to make her my slave, so you guys just forget about her already. And then Garling comes in saying that she'll be his wife. So quit dreaming, Summers. And it's like, damn, dude, they're all just fighting over this girl. And the main Maya girl says, hey, Gunko, now that you're with us, we might just take home the Clan War Trophy. Fascinating, huh? It's fascinating that the celestial dragons refer to their families as clans. You know, it kind of goes back to the Davey Clan and potentially the Monkey Clan or the Trafalgar Clan. I do wonder, like, what is the purpose here? You know, what is the Clan War Trophy? Is it simply Shakky, or is it going to be something that they have back at Marie Joie? I am curious, brother. But yeah, with that being said, let me know your guys' thoughts on this chapter down below. I think this chapter is phenomenal. Great setup. I love the retcon, you know, I think it's cool. I'm not, like, really offended by it. I also find it kind of notable that some of the chests look different from others. Like, I think there's, like, a black chest, a gray chest. I would have kind of went in on these chest designs. And I'm not talking about female chests either. But yeah, man, I am excited for God Valley next chapter. I do think that we will stick with this. I do not think we're going to cut away. You know, leading into this chapter, I was wondering, like, okay, maybe we don't get it here. Maybe we get it with Blackbeard and Garp. Maybe we get it with Scopper Gabon later, or somebody else in that tier. But no, considering how hard Oda is going in on this right now, I think we will see most of God Valley. Maybe he'll skip some of the fights, but I do think we'll see, like, the fall of Rocks fully. I think we will see his death. I think we will see Roger reacting to all of this, which I do want to bring up Roger for a second. A lot of people have slandered Roger over this, saying, oh, you know, Roger's trying to stop a man from saving his family. And I get it. I think the memes are hilarious, but let's be real here for a minute. The minute Roger shows up onto this island and he sees what's going down, the minute he sees Rox trying to save his wife and kid, I don't think Roger is going to stand in Rox's way. Maybe if Rox starts attacking everybody and he starts harming slaves and celestials and just, I guess, everyone, I could see Roger stepping in and stopping him there. But I do think the minute Roger steps foot here, his objective of kicking Rox's ass will quickly change, right? I could see the Roger Pirates simply going after Shakky and also helping some of the slaves escape. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on it, though. Let me know what you guys think about this chapter down below. Again, we will be going through the comment section in the next couple of days. So if you want your comment read in the comment reading video, post-game video, make sure to drop them down there. But yeah, until then, you guys stay safe and peace out, brothers.